Forward to the cloud. All right. Good morning, or actually good afternoon, technically, everyone. My name is Dale Shabizian. I'm the CEO of Cape and Plymouth Business Magazine. We are a business-focused magazine, monthly. We're the only business-focused magazine in the South Coast. We have a very large online digital presence, social media, newsletter, website. We're evolving like everyone else. We're trying to, our motto is educating the business community. So we're partnering with CapeSpace and folks like PR First to just get information out, gather some experts, get some information out, record them, have a resource that people can come to while they have this time. Maybe your business is really hectic right now. Maybe you have some time. This is a great time to meet some new people, see some new faces, learn some new skills. And that's what we're trying to do. So, Robin, we lost your video and we see your great logo. Are you still there? Oh, we may have lost Robin. Also joining us is Nicole Hales, VP of Client Services for PR First.
Hello, everyone.
Farrell, President of PR First.
Hey, everyone. I'm glad to be with you.
If I could just ask you just to do like a 1-minute intro. Your experience, kind of what you're bringing to the table today to kind of give everyone an idea of kind of the information sources that we're going to be getting, that we're going to be learning about today, and sort of your philosophy.
Sure. I'll start. Nicole, I'd love to have you add in too. So we are a PR firm that works with a lot of businesses and organizations. What we hope to convey today to people are a couple of key principles of how PR can help them build a business. We'll go through some of the components of what a campaign is. We'll talk also about communication and how it's changed during this pandemic, because that's certainly a question that's on everyone's mind is, what do I say? How often do I say? How do I communicate? And we can also talk somewhat about the issue of damage control, which is something that no business or organization hopes they'll ever need to do, but it's nice to know if you need to. We'll have a few tips for how to navigate through that as well. Nicole, maybe you could add to that.
Sure. Well, I can give a little information about our backgrounds. We are a public relations firm based in Hanover, Massachusetts, relatively small. There's about 6 of us. I have been in public relations for the last 9 years and in other media before that. Jim founded the company in 1998, so this is our 22nd year. And our other colleagues also have years of journalistic background experience. So it's something that differentiates us from other public relations firms in that we all have journalistic backgrounds as well, and so really have a good sense of what is news versus maybe somebody trying to push advertising as a way of getting their name out there. So we really, we work with great clients, and it is very satisfying to see them get the recognition that they deserve for the good work they're doing.
Great. And Robin, of course, is with CapeSpace. CapeSpace is a co-working center with a combination of private offices, meeting rooms, function rooms. You can go there for an hour, or you can go there for a month. They're located in Hyannis and in Mashpee. We have an office there. We absolutely love it. We started with a virtual mailbox, and then we decided to headquarter our business there. So there's really a variety of functions that CapeSpace can provide to us. I'm giving the CapeSpace intro, Robin, because we lost you on video for a second.
Excellent job. You don't need me.
So with that said, it's 12:04. I'm going to share my screen here, and we can jump right into the presentation. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
I'm still sort of new at the Zoom thing, even though I have a degree in information technology. If anyone's having trouble, you can just let me know in the chat. Okay, so let's kick it right off.
Yeah, so I'll start with this one if I might, and this is
Sure.
Just a real quick look at what is PR. And we tell people that it is a form, a very specific form of marketing, and we often say it's the least understood and certainly the least utilized forms of marketing. In basic terms, it is having the news media help to tell the story of a business, and that can be anything from a specific announcement like a new hire, a new location, all the way up to covering thought leadership articles from them. And the goal of it is to achieve two goals. One is higher visibility or name recognition through the media. And the second is the ability to have a company or an organization seen as a leader in its field. So for simple terms, it's taking the news of an organization and having it told through newspapers, online media, magazines, and occasionally television, depending on the story itself.
Okay. So, you know, as we collaborated on this presentation, I had a question here, like, why is that important to us? Everything going on in the world, why is it important to get this information out? It seems kind of silly, right? Nicole said it. A lot of companies are doing a lot of great things. And, you know, I always try to balance like manipulating, doing something good, but also when you get recognized for doing something good, right? People support you, which help you do even more good, right?
I think people like doing business with companies and organizations that are forward-thinking and are philanthropic and like to help the community. And that's the kind of news that at a time like this, particularly, all times really, but certainly at a time like this, so people like to hear and see some good news. We see so much negativity that this is a chance for a business to break through that clutter and to have something positive said about them. And regarding for small businesses, small and mid-sized, which are the kind that we work with most often, as you know, Dale, particularly with your work in the news business, that most media outlets don't have the resources to drill down all the way down to the local corner store business, that local small business group. So that for this segment of the business community to have its story told, they need to be proactive and reach out to the media themselves. And our experience has been that media is willing and in some cases even eager to share legitimate business news, and that's really where what we do comes into play.
Yeah, Dale, I would actually just add to that also, one thing that I've noticed, we do have several organizations who sometimes are a little reticent to share some of the philanthropic work that they do, especially in this time, because they're not doing it necessarily for you know, to showboat themselves, but it serves as a great example for other organizations who are looking for ways to do something good as well. And so by sharing the news of what they're doing, it gives other people inspiration to think, oh, well, our organization can do something similar to that as well. So it's another great way to continue that good feeling going.
That's a great point. All right. So now that we understand a little bit, you know, what is PR? What are some, you know, reasons why we would do it? Basic overview. If someone wants to engage, you know, to me, it was always kind of a mystery, right? So if you could just explain this next slide here, like what are the components that we need to be thinking about?
Sure. When we work with a client on a PR campaign, we talk about a several-pronged strategy because there are different tools that we can use to really help work on building that visibility and gaining credibility. Press releases definitely are the first one. We consider that kind of the building block of a public relations campaign. And that is usually a series of announcements of news about an organization. So for example, new hires, promotions, awards won, new services being offered, anything that would qualify as news is a great opportunity to get a organization's name out in front of not only readers, but also editors and reporters. A source letter or introductory letter is a letter that we write that talks about the organization and specifically an individual within that organization and highlights their areas of expertise. And that is sent to reporters and editors who may be in the future working on stories that relate to those topics. And we find that that's a great way to get in front of reporters and editors before they even necessarily know what story they're going to be working on, to introduce them literally to someone, so that when an idea comes up, they can think back, oh, I actually read about somebody who may offer an interesting perspective about this. Let me contact them. Company or organizational profiles are another great way to highlight your business. And usually those are focused on possibly a growth strategy, maybe a challenge the business overcame, possibly a case study. But depending on the publication, those are great opportunities to really get very detailed about your organization. Company contributed articles or thought leadership articles are a great way for, again, one of the people, and it doesn't always have to be the same person in an organization, but one person to speak specifically about a topic. And because it is, we keep those objective, but they also share good information, and maybe a specific strategy, maybe a discussion of new trends that they're seeing in a certain marketplace. And what we would do is reach out to a publication and see if they were open to accepting a contributed article. Usually we would look at publications depending on the vertical markets that an organization might be interested in trying to reach out to. And so that way they can get information that they're sharing in front of a readership that's specific to a market they're looking for. And because, again, it is being published, it is seen as a credible or expert source of information. Events are things that are sometimes overlooked, but they're great opportunities as well for PR, and that can include ribbon cuttings, anniversary celebrations, any other award celebrations. And that's a great opportunity, obviously, to get people together at the time. We'll see when we start seeing those happen again. But virtual events can also work in their place. And again, it's a great opportunity to build up some good feeling about an organization. And those can be promoted both before and after with photos and captions. And then obviously all of the information we talked about can and should be posted to various social media, depending on what kind of organization you are, will depend on what kinds of social media you're using, but they're all great posts.
Great. Anything to add, Jim?
Well, looking toward what actually is our next slide, but it kind of goes through it, is the idea of, we look for a lot of the time to figure out when is this, what's appropriate. And the biggest distinction we need to draw for clients and for those who maybe are thinking about doing some of their own PR is to give it the, is it news test? And at the risk of simplifying this way more than it needs to be, just a quick example. XYZ Landscaping is offering 20% off on its spring flowers as an advertisement. But XYZ Landscaping being named Best Landscaper on Cape Cod by the American Landscaping Association is a news story. So we always tell people, start with looking at, is this legitimately news? Are the people who are going to read this or review it, are they going to see it as something that's informing them, or are they going to see it as an attempt to try and promote something? So we always tell people, our clients, look for the newsworthy value of it. Nicole covered most of what we have on this slide, but basically the opportunities within an organization when someone is hired, someone's promoted, or even if somebody who is a principal in an organization serves on an outside board, it's worth announcing that also. And the question that we sometimes get is, why is that important? And I tell people, it's like if you know the words to a favorite song of yours, the reason that you know those words is because you heard that song over and over and over and over again. And in a sense, that's what a news release campaign should do. It should be that drip, 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 where the name is always out there for something important. And it can include anything like if a company's gotten a new client, won an award, has some industry news to share. And new products and services are always big. And sometimes we've worked with some companies that have had some really pretty significant new products to announce. We worked with a startup company in Cambridge that is bringing a remotely controlled surgical robot to market. So of course that was a that's a home run for a new product, but it doesn't need to be anything that dramatic or that large to be announced. And in particular, in this climate, even companies that are offering their own masks and their own gloves is certainly a product-worthy announcement. So just a few thoughts to add to it.
Yeah, I think, you know, something you really said as you were going through this, the question why popped into my brain. You know, as a business owner, as someone who's always thinking about making their business better, and I notice a lot of our readers and our audience and the people here, like, we're here because we want to learn, and we want to know the why, right? So if we, to me, when you said XYZ landscaper wins an award, you might think, wow, that's great. To me, I think, why did they get that award? I'm curious. Was it customer service? Was it they have some new, you know, forward-thinking product? Like, how did they get there? That part's really interesting to me. It's not just, you know, great. It's here's a business who's out here like excelling. What can I learn from them? That, to me, that's really valuable and interesting.
Absolutely, and I think most of the time when a company wins an award like that, it's a real. We always encourage them, and we dig for that answer. What is it that made this happen? And we certainly include that in any announcement we would write. We also look at these announcements to the point of what you were just talking about, Dale. So this company wins this award because it's superior customer service, or because, well, for whatever the reason. We hope that announcement by itself, it's newsworthy. We also hope it serves as a springboard, that a curious writer, reporter, blogger, editor is going to say, I want to know more about that company, like you just did. And I think that that's part of the objective of these press releases as well, is to spark further interest.
Okay, great. So what are the elements of a great press release?
Well, as Jim mentioned, it definitely does need to be conveying news. And when we work on press releases, we are very much focused on the brand of the organization itself. They always end with an about section about the organization, just again to give an opportunity to share more information about an organization with reporters and editors. Some publications will run the whole thing, mostly not, but again, it's a great opportunity to offer that additional information. And it really helps to, overall, the goal is to showcase a company's knowledge and expertise in the field. And Jim, I think you can talk more about the specifics.
Sure.
On the next slide.
Yep. And so I'll mention, which is not on here, but it goes with it, is in the writing of any press release, it's the old newspaper style, the W's, who, what, when, where, and why. And as you had asked earlier, Dale, the why of it. So all of them should do that. We recommend and encourage that news releases are written in straight newspaper format, newspaper or magazine format style, so that it's very, very straightforward. Most important information at the top, and the information that if an editor or a webmaster is going to trim, that's the information we put at the bottom. It's nice to include, but not 100% necessary. The important parts at the very beginning. We think that the regular distribution of them, and most companies have many opportunities for news releases, as we've talked about. So we think distributing them at regular intervals helps that foundation of news, which what makes it different from other types of marketing is that a press release or a thought leadership article or an interview carries with it that third person credibility. And by that I mean that it's not the owner of the company necessarily saying, aren't we great? It's the fact that an editor or reporter thought enough of that content to include it as news. So that gives it a big boost in terms of credibility.
Absolutely.
In terms of the mechanics and the specifics of news releases, the way that we handle them and the way that we encourage anyone who is doing so, whether they use a firm like ours or they do it on their own, is to create a media list which is appropriate, and think of it in terms of geography, that a lot of news is geographically driven. And by that I mean, as I say, I'm talking to you from Kingston today on the South Shore. And the newspaper in my hometown is certainly interested in news that is about and pertaining to this town. And if they receive a press release from an organization, say in Woburn or Wilmington or Williamstown, it's going to have less, if any, value to them because it's not a local connection. So you want to think in terms of a media list of geography, then industry, and then you want to look at the larger picture. There are a number of outlets that are regional, and then there are journals and magazines that cater specifically by industry, whether it's construction or commercial real estate or banking. So one of the steps that we take, that we encourage people to do, is create an appropriate media list. And then comes the challenge of figuring out who receives it at each of these outlets. So that if one's chances of having a news release picked up and used are greatly enhanced if it gets to the right recipient. So there's a lot of work in determining who that is. We tell people that news should be distributed via email typically, and typically embedded in the message of the email as opposed to an attachment. Most people are so freaked out, rightly so, about hacking and everything. People are loath to open attachments. So what we say is if we send a news release, even to an outlet who knows us and works with us, if we have a photo or some attachment that we put, we'll put it in the subject line, attachment is, so that they'll know that it's there by intent. And I think also it's important, photos really help sell a story. It's great when someone is hired or reappointed or is serving as won an award. A good photo is always a big help to being included.
Okay. I've been involved with Google, getting found in Google SEO for a long time, over 10 years. And getting a press release published is like getting found in Google Gold. It gives you a huge amount of online reputation. Do you have any experience? This is a question we don't have to get into far. There are services out there that you can pay that just kind of blast these things off, right?
Yes.
Would you say that's a lot would you say that's lower quality than actually curating a list and trying to develop a connection with your local media? And I already know the answer, but I have to ask.
I would say curating your own list, developing the right contact is definitely better. There are services out there, and there are the big ones like Business Wire and PR Newswire, which will distribute an announcement nationally and even internationally. And the fee it can be anywhere from $400 up to $1,000, depending on the length and the list that you choose. But even with those, and they will typically get a number of placements. We've used them before for clients in the past, but it's like throwing something up against a wall to see what sticks. You're really better off to have your own list and to really go through it, which also gets you to the question that a lot of people ask, which is, okay, so I sent this and it's been 4 days and I haven't seen it anywhere. What do I do? And the answer, there are a number of strategies that we recommend. And one of them is do not call editors on deadline. And we can talk more about this afterwards.
Okay. Let's flip to the next.
Yeah.
We have some links in here that can go out to examples of releases. Do you want to look at one, or do we want to let the audience go and see some examples later?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I think there's a few here. If you want to show them the one, and I can talk about that one first, and then we can go to the other ones.
I don't know what's going to happen here. I hope this doesn't.
Yeah, perfect.
That's great. So, so we chose a few press releases that had different outcomes, just to give an example of different outcomes that might result might result from a press release. And in this case, NFI Corp, which is located in New Bedford, had celebrated 1,000 days of safety back in the fall. And that in and of itself was a great achievement. It was an event which also allowed for photographs, and we actually had local and state officials come to celebrate. So it's great for building relationships with those kinds of individuals as well, should they have an issue in the future. You can see it gave us an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of their previous achievements as well. And this, by sending out this press release, which appropriately showed up in several of their local and regional publications, it also led to a request for a contributed article on how a manufacturer had achieved this level of safety while also achieving a great level of growth, which is why we included in there. They had been named over the past year on several different publications lists for fastest growing companies. So, so they were able to provide an example, provide some knowledge, again, positioning them as an expert about how they were able to focus on safety, but also achieve their sales levels as well.
Great. So we'll distribute, I don't know why these aren't linking right now, but I'll make sure those are working, and we'll distribute the presentation to the attendees afterwards, and they can go out. We can dig into all of them. For the sake of time, we might want to keep moving for now, but we'll have examples of, you know, a well-formed or effective newsletter, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've talked about some fun things, and as Jim mentioned, we hope we're never there, but we all have insurance, right? And insurance is something you have, but you hope you never use, however that phrase goes. So a couple things, you know, so I think when we look at the word crisis, there's two ways we can look at it. One is a company has made some type of a mistake and have to backtrack and apologize or do whatever is necessary to make that right. And the second is what we're in right now. And we're gonna kind of talk about both. I wanted to give a perspective of, you know, how can we talk to our clients when things are uneasy, right? Things are uneasy right now. But also working in, if we've done something, how can a company approach that? So who would like to take this slide?
Well, I can start.
Okay.
I'll start with the idea of you want to start with what happens when someone a company has made a mistake? Is that or do you want to look at what we're doing now?
Let's talk about what we're in right now.
Okay.
So how do we approach people when their mind is everywhere? We're maybe a little extra sensitive.
Sure.
Those kinds of things.
Yeah. So, I mean, for example, we're not, people don't want to hear someone sound like a salesperson right now. They don't want to say, sorry, you're in the middle of this epidemic. By the way, can you use our help? So you have to be really, sensitive, not to be tone deaf in a time like this. And a couple of ways, I mean, I think it's always appropriate to email or text, depending on the level of familiarity you have with your client and their preferred, or your customer and their preferred form of communication. I think it's always appropriate to just reach out, ask, how are you doing? How are you holding up? How's your business doing? And even if you know them well enough, we hope your family's well. I think those kind of messages are always appropriate. Again, respecting that you don't do it every day, but you reach out from time to time to just say, we're just checking in. And I think at the end of that, it's certainly appropriate to say, if there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know. But another item to consider is, if you are, whatever your business is, your customers may well look to you as an advisor, a trusted advisor of some sort. And it's also appropriate in those messages, maybe the first one is just a hello, how are you doing? We're just thinking of you. But if you have information that is useful for them, I think it's okay to send that along, even if it has nothing to do with your business. Like, for instance, the recent Paycheck Protection Program, there was a ton of news out there about it. And if you are a business owner who knows that some of your customers are thinking about it and you've got some information for them, share it. If there's something that's kind of lighthearted and upbeat and optimistic, it's okay to send that too. I think people look for a chance to kind of break through this idea that it's all bad news. So I think use the appropriate frequency and the appropriate language, and say hello, check in from time to time. And I think that as far as if you want to reach out to people, you can sign up for their newsletters. You can respond if you see them on LinkedIn or Facebook. Then they have a post of some kind that you can like it. You can make a comment. And just in general, we always say, when you reach out to people, particularly at this time, make the content, make the message about them and not about you, or in our case, not about us, to make it about the people who are on the receiving end. One quick example. We have a client down in Southwest Connecticut that runs an IT firm, and what he has taken to doing is creating goodwill packages that he sends out to all of his clients, and it's information that they can in turn repackage and repromote to their clients. So he's giving away information in the belief that this is going to help his clients, it's going to get them through a tough time. And as many of us, I think, believe that if you believe in karma, the idea that good things come back to help you. So be helpful, be informational, be upbeat, and find those kind of ways to step back into the conversation.
That's great. I think that's great advice. On the right side of the screen here, maybe a little bit small to see on your screen, but we ran a poll on our website that we promoted through social media and our newsletter, and it said, how are you communicating with customers right now? And I believe this was a multiple choice. You could check all the options. And what was interesting to me is not one person said they weren't communicating with their customers. And I know a lot of vendors, I think we're past that point right now, but we're still kind of curious. A lot of our vendors were sending us emails about service levels. We're doing everything we can. We've distributed shifts around the clock, and we've got, they're telling us how, whether we're able to use our service the same, whether we were able to use their service the same way or not, they were telling us what they were doing kind of each step of the way. And I kind of appreciated that. If I wasn't interested, I was like, okay, this not a big deal. But there were a lot of things I think it just said something to me, like, these people are actually taking steps and they're caring, like they're going out of their way to do whatever they can. And maybe it's a little different than what we had agreed on, whatever, but they're doing what they can. And that went a long way with our team.
I think it makes sense. I agree with what you're saying. I think it makes perfect sense to communicate as often as you need to. We've worked with a few financial institutions who have had a myriad of communication needs. And in general, the advice we give them, and it's not that they don't know it, but it just kind of reinforces it, is communicate clearly, communicate with empathy, and look for, wherever possible, some silver lining in what you're talking about. If you're going to if you have to close a branch for whatever reason or anything like that, always try to find a way to let people know that, it's not just this is what's going on, but also here's a solution. Here's a way this can work for you. For instance, in the banking world, with a number of banks having closed their branches for a period of time due to COVID, the push has been, let's teach our customers who are used to in-person branch banking how to use online, how to use the other options we have. So make it as seamless and as smooth as possible. And there's a certain skill to communicating that, because people resist change. So, as you said, Dale, it's nice to be informed. It's nice to have people look for those ways to tell you something and to make certain that there's a solution at the end of here's what we're telling you, email or a call.
That's great. Anything else before we move on?
Do you want to, and I guess, do we have, are we referencing the idea of damage control itself? Yeah, we do, with the communication hot buttons.
Yeah, I'm kind of peeking ahead. We do
Okay.
have a few slides left.
Okay. You tell us what you want us to do. We're good with whatever.
I think that, I think this slide really talks, so we're going to get in, one of the things that I had asked Jim and Nicole to talk about is, if you've done something wrong, right? made a mistake, or maybe we have a client that's not working in our system, or they're behind on billing, or there needs to be this conversation that's not all fantastic. Keeping in mind there's a heightened level of sensitivity right now. Let's first talk about hot buttons people may have right now, or if damage control, if something's happened, how can a company, or how can we, other than hiring an expert, what are some things that we can do in those situations?
Well, go ahead, Nicole. I think that was you.
Well, we are seeing a lot of organizations that had already planned ahead with a crisis management plan, putting that in effect. And obviously, you can't plan for every kind of crisis, but it gives a good guideline of how to move forward should things all of a sudden shift. And one of the biggest points of a crisis management plan, we think, is to make sure that you have one spokesperson to provide consistent communication. You do want communication coming out consistently, and also you want to say what you need to say, but not too much more. So having one person who is responsible for that is really a great strategy. In terms of damage control, again, you're going to admit the problem, talk about ways you have resolved it or are planning to resolve it, and then move on and talk about ways that you are continuing to do better. And once again, having that foundation of press releases that talks about all of the good things your organization has done really helps to offset any potential future negative news that you may have. And then you also have that track record for then continuing to build on positive news. So those are the points that we would definitely stress in terms of both a specific negative event that has taken place, or a situation where we're in now where all operating systems have been shifted and people are struggling to figure out how to operate in this new environment.
Yep. I think you said a couple things that I've always tried to do in my, when I'm in a situation where I've made a mistake or someone I'm representing makes a mistake and that's admit that you found a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Admit the problem, apologize, and then talk about, here's what we're doing so this never happens again, right? That's all we want to hear. A mistake happened, we're sorry. Here's what we're doing so you don't have to go through this again. And if someone's upset, we can't change that. All we can change is the next outcome, right?
Yeah, but I think admitting the mistake initially, like you talked about, really goes a long way, because exactly, individuals just want to hear that, yes, they're justified in feeling a certain way, and to own up to something, to be accountable, to accept responsibility, and then to demonstrate how you're going to move forward from it, I think is really positive, and what most people are looking for.
Okay.
Can I jump in and say something?
Sure, you're in.
Yeah, so you're reminding me of a conference that I was in a couple of years ago, and there was a speaker who was an expert on reputational risk, and that this gentleman had actually created an insurance product that he was trying to pitch, to insure you for hits to your reputation. But the point that he was making in terms of crisis or damage control is that how effective your damage control is only as effective as the reputation that you already have built for yourself. So, and the example being that, if you remember, maybe 10 years ago or so, there was a rollout of an Apple phone that was kind of a disaster. But everybody just said, well, they're good guys. They just made a mistake. It's no biggie. But then, when BP has an oil spill, everybody says, oh, we always knew they were bad, and all this does is prove it. So same damage control, both of companies employed, but very different reaction from the public because of the reputation that they had already established. So point being to, your topic here is that the PR, has to start long before the damage happens, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, PR, you're right. PR can't make a company great, but it can certainly take a great company or a good company and tell its story and get it well implanted in those search engines so that when there is the inevitable problem that comes up, you know, as Dale was talking earlier about SEO, when you go up and you Google a company's name and you see one really damaging press release, but then you see 10 or 12 or 15 other items that are positive, people are inclined to give that company the benefit of the doubt. But, you know, BP is, it's a great example. And, you know, I think that certainly it makes sense to always be planning. You know, no one ever wants to think there's going to be bad news, but you want to be ready, and good PR is money in the bank for when it happens.
That's great advice. All right, let's keep moving on here. Billing challenges. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but we're in or heading towards tough times. How can we, and people are lost focus. How can we, and I only put this up here because when I had talked about this, these were some specific questions that people came back like, here are some areas we're having a hard time like communicating or talking about. So let's say someone's falling behind, they've gone silent, those kinds of things. What can businesses do right now to kind of all in this together, but obviously business needs to keep moving?
Well, I mean, I think to start with, again, it goes to tone that you acknowledge. We know this is a tough time. We feel it as well. And we're hoping that there is a way we can work together through this. And perhaps it's a time when you extend your terms a bit if you need to. You extend them out if they're 30 days, they go out to 60. It's possible also in some cases that if somebody is having a really tough time, you find some other way to forgive part of what they owe you in order to save the account and keep it going forward. And I think really the big thing is, don't make that the first and only thing that they hear from you is, by the way, we're checking on your bill. Now, I will say also, just as an aside, but you know, as an aside, think about this, and we certainly have heard others say it, and we've experienced it somewhat ourselves, is that this is a different environment. So no one knows who's working in what offices anymore. So perhaps the old traditional means of putting a stamp on an envelope and sending it out, have it sit in an empty office for 3 weeks isn't going to serve you well. So one legitimate question that you can broach with a client is to say, given the issues that are going on in the remote work, how should we proceed with our invoices? Is it okay if we email them to you, or give us the best way that it'll get there fast? And then I think be compassionate, be flexible in terms of what you can offer them, and that's basically, I guess, the best you can really do. Nicole, did I miss anything there that you can think of? Okay.
Great. That's great advice. So we're heading into we've got about 17 minutes left, and we do want to leave an opportunity for questions. If anyone has a question, please jump in right away. The last segment we're going to talk about is a tool to grow business. So I don't know, this kind of stuck out. This isn't just crisis, it's credibility, right? So, and credibility and reputation, I think right now is the new currency, right? So if you could just talk a little bit about what that means.
Yes. In addition to visibility, credibility, I think, is really the main goal of public relations. And we're not making it up. The organizations, the leaders of the organizations have this credibility, but they just need to build it and convey it appropriately so that the people who would be spreading news about a certain topic of which they're credible recognize them. So we do that through source letters, as we talked about before, where we specifically make sure that people know about the leader of an organization, what they are credible in specifically, why they are, what their background is. Maybe if they have a specific interesting take on that topic in particular. And we make sure that we let people know about it so that as news develops with regard to those topics, people know to contact them and to recognize them as somebody who can speak to that area.
Right. So
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you able to share an example of a source letter?
We can certainly, I can talk a little bit about what that looks like. Are you talking about sharing a specific letter that we would
Yeah, I
send
mean,
out?
you can, redact it to protect the innocent, but
Sure.
just wondering, I mean, what it looks like.
Yeah, so in general, I would say it usually, it starts with, we reach out to reporters who have talked about a specific topic. So maybe one that I've done recently talks about the issue of people starting to go back to work, but not having childcare options and how this is really a big issue. So we work with an organization that provides early childhood education and development. And so we would reach out to them and say, we saw that you have been working on these stories. Here's another source to consider, somebody who can really speak well to this topic. This is why, this is their organization, this is what they're specialize in. This is this individual's background in particular, and all of her experience in the company itself, and then her prior experiences on different state committees. And then it ends with, please keep this individual in mind. If you would like to reach her, please let us know, and we'll be happy to facilitate a conversation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Okay, so this came up a couple times. Let me just see how many slides we have left. This is the last slide. So building on that, what you're proposing is as part of your campaign, and I would encourage everybody, the expertise and information you've brought here is amazing. I will personally go back and probably go through the presentation again, and I'm thinking about those first few slides, like the components and the pieces. You talked about this, the credibility. Can you explain, thought leadership and how does that play into this whole process?
Sure. So there are a variety of magazines, newspapers, websites that are open to taking outside contributed articles from companies to add to the content that they share with their readers and viewers. And as an example, let's just say we work with a tax advisory CPA firm, and with the changes that have occurred with the new tax laws over the last year and a half, and what do those changes mean for businesses? What should you know that you didn't know? We've reached out to a lot of different magazines and newspapers and asked, would you be interested in an objective article from this individual, from this company, on the subject of 10 tips everybody should know about the new tax laws? And what we do is we work with them, and most of the time we'll certainly take the lion's share of the writing, taking it from the input that our client gives us, and we'll get these articles anywhere from 500 to 1,000 words, usually posted in a variety of different magazines. So why is that important? So when they see the name of this individual in this magazine, they again think, okay, this is someone who has credibility. This is someone who knows what he or she is talking about, and it is seen as a credibility booster. Some other examples, like for IT companies, and we work with several of them, this working from home has been a bonanza in many ways for thought leadership articles, because the articles that go out the most are, how do you make sure? Do you have a VPN? How do you make sure that your home network is safe? What are 10 things you should be on the lookout for? And then for the companies, what access should you provide remote employees to your network, your infrastructure? So these are articles that are intended to inform and to educate, but on the other end of that, the articles carry the name of the author and the name of his or her company, and therefore these are seen as positions of expertise. Companies often use those as part of their marketing. They'll post them on their website or LinkedIn, and if they still rely on print presentations, they'll take copies with them. But almost everybody, and I don't mean this I don't mean this to be flippant, but the definition of an expert, I think, a lot of times is the person writing knows more than the person reading. And so people are sometimes loath to think of themselves as experts. But if you worked in a business for as long as you have expertise, and your ability to share it is something that a lot of these media outlets will look for. And they like it because it adds to content for them. And also it's contributed material that's beneficial, useful, and they don't have to pay a writer to go out and find it.
Jim, are you saying that you would always ask first rather than just write it and send it out?
Yes. Not every firm does it the way we do, but yes, we have found that the best way from having been an editor of newspapers prior to PR. So I was on the receiving end of a lot of PR outreach. So we've tried as a company to make that one of our best practices. Make sure that we're invited to send it, and then go ahead and do it.
I think, I don't know if I may have missed part of your question, Robin, but I think a press release can just be sent, but thought
Yes.
leadership,
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
thought leadership is some, more of a contribution, I actually, Jim, I think you may have said it both ways. You may have said, you gave an example of top 10 tax tips. Are you suggesting you present that topic and then get some parameters back and then submit it? Is that what you're
Yes.
suggesting?
Yes,
Okay.
we would go to, because we would approach multiple outlets on certain with certain articles. So for example, if that CPA firm, say they had a specialization in the construction field or in the hospitality field, in addition to the general business media, we would also go to the construction media and the hospitality media and ask, would you be interested in an article, 10 tips on? And when those who say yes come back to us, one might say, yes, we want a 500-word article that focuses on this. Someone else says we want a 1,000-word article on this, and there are two different deadlines. So we go back to the client and say, here's what we found. This is who is interested in the article. Let's go to work and get these two articles done for you. But in terms of press releases, we just send out, because we do the vetting on our end to make certain that they're legitimate news. But we always ask for thought leadership articles.
Jim, do you find that, are you able to comment on whether there is a higher rate of things getting published if they're coming from a PR firm as opposed to coming directly from the business?
I'm going to attempt not to take that as a softball question. I think it depends. I mean, I think honestly, because we're practiced at it, because we know who to go to, we probably have a higher ability to break through to the right people. But I think anyone who has a good idea, gets to the right person, and can follow the parameters that editor says, will still be successful.
Yeah, I think, to put the magazine hat on, and I can hear Laurel's voice in my head, who's here today. Our magazine has a mission, and it takes time to know how that particular outlet thinks and what content works for them. And, businesses can certainly write something and submit it, but it takes time and practice, to get it into the format and kind of the idea of the way that outlet may work, right? Mm-hmm. And this is, I say the same thing when I give my SEO webinars. It's anybody can do it, but it takes some time. You can hire someone, or you can learn it yourself. And if you do it yourself, don't be discouraged. It's gonna take some time. You're not gonna get responses right away. You have to build that relationship just like you would on social media or in person. You have to kind of build that relationship right over time. And it's just not going to be automatic, right? But it does serve a great purpose.
And too, I know there's some publications that we've worked with and have reached out on behalf of several clients. And our track record of submitting an article that meets their editorial guidelines, that is objective, that's not a overstated sales pitch, has given us the ability to get more opportunities for future clients. So I think that goes a long way too. That
it's an easier bet for them because they know that they're going to get an article from us, regardless of who the client is. We're going to vet it and make sure that it's what they're looking for.
Great. So we have a question from Helene Kelly. Great job, Jim and Nicole. What is your take on actually connecting with reporters and editors with shrinking editorial staff? And now they aren't in brick and mortar offices, but working off site. How do you personally connect with them to pitch?
Well, I guess I will start with that. Most of our contact with editors, reporters, and first of all, hello, Helene. Thanks for listening. Most of our contact with reporters and editors is via either email or phone, and we've learned along the way that there are a number of media people who entrust us with their cell phone numbers, and implicit with that is don't abuse this. So when we call them, we're careful to do so only if it's a necessity. We had a Boston, we work with one of the reporters we work with, the Boston Globe, was doing a story on the Paycheck Protection Program a few weeks ago and was looking for some contacts. And knowing this gentleman as I do, knowing that he's very, very busy, I resorted to texting him to let him know we have a contact for you. Here's how. So we just try to find a way that's the least intrusive, but also you need to be persistent too. You know, and just one quick point I wanted to mention is with routine press releases, it is never a good idea to just follow up and call and ask if you received it. You know, there's always a different way to do it. Follow up and say, I wondered if you had any questions, you had any more information. You have to be a little mindful of the fact that most editors, reporters are under crushing deadlines. And if you think the amount of emails you get in a day is a lot, probably multiply it times 10, and that's what they're dealing with. Nicole, anything I missed on that?
Yeah.
One thing I might add, and hi Helene, thanks for watching today, is one of the things that you talked about where there's been shifts in staffing. Reporters change from place to place, so it's important to build those relationships because the person that you know at the Boston Globe maybe moves to Providence Business Journal or something, and eventually you start to get more connections in different places, and you can always ask them, you know, now that you've left, who's replacing you, who's the best person for us to reach out to.
And connecting with as many reporters and media people as you can on LinkedIn is also a great idea for anybody who's looking to build a list.
Great. Any other questions here? We have a couple more minutes.
I have a related question to the last one. Do you have any tips for getting reporters interested in doing stories on you? So in other words, not providing them with the content, but getting them interested in, you know, so yeah, doing a story. So, you know, so you have, you know, if you follow the Globe, for example, or reporters who specialize in areas, you know, rather than going through an editor for content that we produce, you know, any thoughts on that?
Well, I can start, Jim, and then if you want to add to this, I actually do that pretty frequently where I'll follow specific reporters and look at the stories that they're writing about. And when I see that they're working on something and I know that one of our clients has a different perspective that hasn't been talked about yet, it makes a lot of sense for me to reach out to them to point out that here's this other person that could add to the conversation. And it's worked out where they're many times, you know, it's not one and done with reporters. They'll go back to a certain subject and get a follow up on it. So it's good for them to have that source. And I mean, it's not all the time, but I have definitely seen a reporter come back and say, yes, that would be great to get this other perspective. So that is definitely one way. Jim, I'm thinking about some of the letters that you write on behalf of our clients.
Yeah. Robin, one of the points I would make is I think it's perfectly within bounds as the owner of a business if you email reporters like that and just introduce yourself and say, this is my business, and should you be writing a story about the change in office space or the change in working arrangements, I'd love the chance to be included. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me for either on record or background, and I'd be happy to help. Make sure you have contact information there. And as Nicole said, as a media source finds a reliable source, he or she is very often apt to go back to that person again and again and again, because they're always under deadlines and they like good sources with good content.
Just
Thank
one little piece to add to content has such a short lifespan right now that it's requiring us to continually come up with new content. Like, look at your social media feed. You watch a video that someone took a couple hours to put together. You watch it in 2 minutes. It's gone, almost gone forever. The evergreen quality is kind of shrinking a little bit in today's world. So we have a couple more questions, but while we address them, Robin, Jim, Nicole, if you want to put your email or phone number in the chat, or some type of contact information, so if the attendees have any questions they can follow up with offline, that would be great. And while you're doing that, we might as well answer a couple more questions. We've got two, one from Craig Pierce. Perhaps a discussion offline, but does your firm specialize in any specific market? And then we've got a bunch of great thank yous. So I guess I'll say my thank you. And if anyone wants to jump off, great. If not, we'll answer Craig's question about any specific markets, Jim and Nicole, that you service or specialize in.
Nicole, do you want to start or do you want me to?
Go ahead. I can add in.
Oh, you want me to start? Is that what you're telling me?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we really work with a lot of different kinds of businesses, mostly B2B, but not all. We do have a couple of retail clients as well. We work with some nonprofit organizations. We seem to be sought after by a lot of small to mid-sized companies who I think are interested in PR and don't necessarily want to hire a Boston firm with its somewhat higher rates than ours. But really, most of the companies we work across, we work with law firms, accounting firms. We've worked with some manufacturers. We've worked with some, as I say, some nonprofits, some architectural firms, construction firms. Help me out, Nicole. What am I leaving out here?
Leadership, executive leadership firms.
Yep.
Banks, IT.
Yep. We work, our model is we typically work with somewhere around 30 clients at any given time. It goes up and it goes down a bit, but we work with, most of them we work with are looking, they hire us either for sometimes a specific event, but more often just for an ongoing chance to get some publicity and take advantage of these opportunities to get their names out into the media.
Great. Robin, this is your webinar. We'll give you the last word. Anything you want to say?
No, actually not. Everything's been said so excellently by our visiting experts. So thank you, Jim and Nicole, and thank you, Dale, for organizing this. It's been a pleasure, and you gave us all a lot to think about, and I definitely feel that in this day and age, I think when Dale and I first started discussing, what might be a good topic to try to put a session like this together on, we were thinking in terms of how difficult it is for businesses to think about things like marketing and advertising at a time like this. And I think focusing on PR, which is more about image and awareness and less about selling, is an excellent way for us to think about how we spend our precious marketing and visibility dollars at this time. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. It's been great.
Well said. All right. With that said, have a great day, everyone, and thanks for joining.
Yep, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.